The family gathering was for my mother's birthday. Of all days, and I almost didn't go. But I knew I had to. I had to see how far this would go. How Daniel and Linda would act now that I knew the truth. I wasn't just Emily anymore. I was someone who had seen the cracks. And now I was watching. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time that afternoon, staring at myself, trying to decide if I was strong enough to sit at that table again. To look at them, to pretend. But not going would have raised questions. And I wasn't ready for questions yet. So I put on a dress, I did my makeup carefully, and I practiced my smile. Daniel noticed and smiled at me. "You look nice," he said, adjusting his jacket. I nodded. "So, do you?" The lie tasted bitter as I forced a smile. When we arrived, the house was already full. Laughter spilled out the front door. Music played softly in the background. Everything looked exactly the same as it always had. That felt cruel. Linda hugged me the moment she saw me. "You made it," she said warmly. "I was hoping you would." Her arms lingered a second too long. I stiffened, then relaxed. I couldn't let her feel it, not yet. Daniel disappeared almost immediately, pulled into a conversation, handed a drink, playing the part he played so well. I watched him across the room. Every smile felt fake now. Every laugh felt rehearsed. And then I saw it. The way Linda looked at him when she thought no one was watching. It wasn't flirtation. It was familiarity. Ownership. Like she already knew how he would respond. Like she didn't need his attention. She expected it. At dinner, they sat across from each other. I sat between my parents, feeling like a ghost. They spoke normally. About work, about plans, about nothing. But under the table, Linda's foot brushed his leg. I saw it. My fork froze midair. Daniel didn't pull away. My chest tightened, so suddenly I thought I might choke. I excused myself. In the bathroom, I locked the door and leaned against it, pressing my hand over my mouth. "Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry." I stared at my reflection again. This time, I looked angry. Not explosive anger. Controlled and focused. The kind that waits. When I came back, Linda was in the kitchen, pouring wine. "Emily," she said casually, "are you okay? You seemed off earlier." I met her eyes, and for the first time, I really looked at her. At the woman who had watched me grow up. Who had held my hand as a child. Who now smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." She studied me for a second longer than necessary. Then she smiled. "Well, try to relax. Family is supposed to feel safe." The words hit me like a slap. Safe. I nodded and walked away before she could see my hands shaking. That night, as we drove home, Daniel reached for my hand. "You were quiet today," he said gently. "I was watching," I replied before I could stop myself. He laughed softly. "Watching what?" I turned toward the window. "Everything." He didn't ask again. But I felt it then, the shift. He knew something was changing. And so did I. Because sitting at that table, watching them touch, laugh, lie, something inside me had finally hardened. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was ready. Knowing the truth didn't bring relief. It brought weight. Every morning I woke up with it sitting on my chest, heavy and unmoving. I brushed my teeth next to the man who was lying to me. I answered texts from the woman who was betraying me. And I said nothing. Daniel thought he was careful, but he wasn't. Once you stop trusting someone, you start noticing patterns instead of excuses. He showered longer, smiled at his phone more, left the room to take calls he used to answer anywhere. And Linda? She became bolder. She texted him when I was in the room. She laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. She stopped hiding the way she looked at him. Like she was daring me to notice. I started writing things down. Dates, times, places. I saved screenshots and backed them up. Sent copies to an email account Daniel didn't know existed. I wasn't emotional when I did it. I was methodical. At night, lying next to him, I replayed conversations in my head. How long has this been going on? Did anyone else know? Was I the last one to see it? Sometimes he would reach for me in his sleep, his arm heavy across my waist. I would lie there, staring into the dark, feeling like I was next to a stranger. One evening, he kissed me and said, "I love you." I almost laughed, almost. Instead, I said it back. And I hated myself for how easy it was. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the pretending. Pretending I wasn't breaking. Pretending I didn't flinch when Linda hugged me. Pretending that every family dinner didn't feel like a performance staged at my expense. I started to plan without calling it a plan. I imagined the moment, the silence, the looks on their faces. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. Not whispered, not denied. Not twisted into something smaller than it was. I wanted it out in the open, where they couldn't rewrite it. Where everyone could see them the way I finally did. The next family gathering was already on the calendar. A big one. Everyone would be there. I circled the date in my mind and felt something settle inside me. I wouldn't confront them in private. They didn't deserve privacy. So I waited, smiling, listening, letting them think they were safe. Because the most dangerous person in the room is the one who already knows everything and hasn't spoken yet. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was nervous. Because I was done being afraid. The house was already loud when we arrived. Voices overlapping, dishes clinking, someone laughing too hard in the kitchen. It was one of those gatherings where everyone assumed nothing bad could happen because bad things didn't belong in places like this. Family places are safe places. Daniel parked the car and reached for my hand. "You okay?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked. "I'm perfect," I said. And I meant it. Linda greeted us at the door, radiant as always. She wore a dress I'd never seen before. Red, confident, and almost celebratory. She hugged me first. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. Then she hugged Daniel, longer. No one noticed it. We sat at the table like we always did. The same seating, the same jokes, and the same illusion. Wine was poured, plates were filled. Conversations started and stopped. And the whole time, I felt strangely calm. At one point, my mother smiled at me and said, "You look different today, Emily." I smiled back. "I feel different." Linda raised her glass. "To family," she said warmly. "To being together. To honesty." Something in her voice tightened on that last word. I stood up, and my chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I want to say something too," I said. The table quieted. Daniel turned to me confused. Linda froze just for a second. "I've been thinking a lot about family," I continued. "About how we trust people because of who they are to us. Because of the roles they play." My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. "I trusted my husband," I said calmly. "And I trusted my aunt." The air shifted. Daniel's smile faltered. Linda's eyes narrowed slightly. For a long time, I blamed myself. I went on. I thought I was imagining things. Being sensitive and paranoid. I looked straight at her. I wasn't. Daniel stood abruptly. "Emily," he said quietly, "let's talk about this later." "No, no way," I replied. Later is how this kept happening. I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table. Face up. "I know how long it's been," I said. "I know where you met. I know how you talked about me when you thought I wasn't listening." Heavy and suffocating. My mother's hand trembled around her glass. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. I didn't take my eyes off Linda. "You can tell them," I said. "Or I can." Linda laughed nervously. "This is inappropriate," she said. "You're making a scene?" That was when Daniel spoke. "This is a misunderstanding." I turned to him. "Then explain the messages," I said softly. "Explain the hotel charges. Explain the photo reflected in a cafe window with my anniversary gift on your wrist." His face drained of color. Someone gasped. Linda's composure cracked. "You went through our private things?" she snapped. "Our," I repeated quietly. That single word destroyed whatever was left. My mother stood up, so fast her chair fell backward. "Linda," she said, her voice shaking. "Is this true?" Linda opened her mouth and immediately closed it. Daniel looked at the floor. That was answer enough. "I didn't come here to scream," I said. "I came here because I refuse to carry this alone anymore." I picked up my phone. "They didn't just betray me," I said to the table. "They sat with you, smiled with you, let you trust them." No one spoke, not a single person defended them. I looked at my husband one last time. "You lost me," I said. "And you did it in front of everyone." Then I picked up my bag, and I walked out. Not crying and not running. Just finally free from the lie. The silence after I left the table was deafening. I didn't run, I didn't scream, I just walked. The front door closed behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt air fill my lungs like it belonged to me. Daniel followed me outside, pleading, apologizing, fumbling for words. Linda, behind him, looked shocked and confused. Almost like she hadn't realized the gravity of what we'd done. "Emily, wait," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "Please. We can fix this." I stopped, turned slowly. The street was empty, the night quiet. I looked at him, looked at her, and I realized something I'd only understood fully in that moment. I didn't need fixing. "I'm done," I said softly. "Both of you." My mother and father eventually followed me outside, their faces pale, a mix of hurt and disbelief. My father's hands trembled. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But only a moment. "This isn't about you," I said. "This is about truth." They didn't argue. They didn't defend Daniel or Linda. They just looked, and in their silence, I saw understanding. Finally. Later, at home, I sat alone. I looked around our apartment, every corner whispering memories of a life that was no longer mine. And for the first time, I cried. Not out of sadness, not entirely. Out of release. out of recognition that I had survived betrayal, that I had walked through the fire and had not been consumed. The days that followed were strange. Calls from family members who didn't know what to say. Questions I didn't answer. Daniel texting, pleading, explaining. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Actions had already spoken louder than any words. Linda tried to reach out once. I didn't pick up. The house felt quieter, emptier. But it also felt mine. And in that quiet, I realized something important. I hadn't lost everything. I had gained clarity. I had gained control. I had finally freed myself from the illusions that had held me captive. Sometimes, the hardest part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the truth you have to live with afterward. But if you face it, truly face it, you can survive. You can rebuild, and you can choose yourself. Weeks passed. The house that had felt heavy with lies now felt quiet. Too quiet at first, but in a way that was comforting. I moved through it differently, aware of every corner, every sound, every shadow. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value my own presence in the world, to feel my own strength. Daniel tried once more. A call, a text, a message on social media. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence was the answer. Linda disappeared from family gatherings. She sent one message apologizing, but it felt empty. I didn't respond. Families slowly adjusted. Some avoided me. Others quietly supported. My mother finally hugged me without words, and in that silence, I understood her gratitude. I started taking walks alone, breathing in the crisp morning air, letting it fill spaces inside me that had been crowded with doubt and pain. I met friends for coffee, laughed at small things, cried at movies, cried at sunsets, cried for everything I had carried silently for too long. And at night, I sat on my balcony, looking at the city lights, thinking about how fragile trust can be and how strong a person can become once it's broken. I didn't rush to rebuild what was lost. I rebuilt myself first. I allowed myself to feel, to grieve, to be free. And slowly, the weight lifted. I started to imagine a life where betrayal was a lesson, not a prison. Where I could love myself first. Where I could trust my instincts. Where I could walk into the world without fear because I had survived the worst and remained whole. I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready.